Rand, I need another episode of Fully Cinematic.
Music biopics are all the rage lately with Respect and I Want to Dance with Somebody, both debuting during the pandemic alone. But Hollywood's been giving us a relatively minor amount of coverage of the labels that distribute the stars' tunes to the world. Though, to be fair, that may be because many of them have been described as soulless corporations dedicated to feeding off the creativity and life force of young, naive artists until they're bled dry and penniless. Nevertheless, Cadillac Records pulled back the curtain on Chess Records. Crush Groove took a look at Def Jam in its infancy, and Straight Outta Compton provided a glimpse of the inner workings of both Ruthless Records and Death Row. And now we have a cinematic chronicle of the ups and downs of late 70s powerhouse indie Casablanca Records. So dust off your favorite 8 tracks, hop into Torino, and lean back as we ride to sunny LA for a sneak peek at Spinning Gold. And oh yeah, there will be spoilers. We're introduced to Brooklyn-born Neil Bogart as he makes a melodramatic entrance into a church service in 1967 Northern California. And before the choir's rendition of Oh Happy Day is over, he's handed Edwin Hawkins a good bit of the contents of his briefcase full of cash. After explaining that the story has and will contain exaggerations for dramatic effect, Neil tells us about his colleagues Cecil Holmes, his cousin Larry Harris, PR man Buck Reingold, his sister-in-law Nancy, wife Beth, and Joyce, co-manager of glam rock band Kiss. Skip to the 1974 Los Angeles launch party for Casablanca Records, featuring a performance by the aforementioned glam rock quartet, during which the smoke machines activate the venue's sprinkler system, emptying the room. Afterwards, at their lavish home, Beth comforts her husband with a piano duet. The next morning, the office is in a frenzy as the company faces a $4 million debt. But the boss is entranced by a reel of Love to Love You, which is interrupted by German-born Italian songwriter, record producer, and disco impresario Giorgio Moroder, who's arrived for a meeting. Having read the scathing accounts of the launch party, he's well aware that the press has declared the label dead. Neil, Cecil, and Buck head to Burbank for a meet at their parent company, Warner Brothers, in order to reveal that they secretly recorded corporate exec Bruce planning to sabotage them. Neil leverages the confession to demand out of their distribution deal, which was unheard of at the time. After being convinced to hitch his Oasis records to Casablanca, Giorgio informs his flagship artist LaDonna Adrienne Gaines that their new boss, Neil, has legally changed her name to Donna Summer and plans to take a similar approach with her look. Flashback to 8-year-old Neil Bogatz in the Glenwood housing projects of Brooknam, where he witnesses his mailman father getting his busted by a loan shark's leg breakers. A decade later, the newly christened Neil Scott is a singer and dance instructor, where he meets Nancy and Beth on the job, hitting it off with the latter right away. In 1963, Neil signed to New York City's Portrait Records as the lead singer of a bubblegum pop band and manages to figure out a way to beat Elvis in a local song contest with his group's ditty, Cherry on Top. After recording 2 more songs for Portrait and a short stint in Soft under the pseudonym Wayne Roberts, in order to raise the dough to buy Beth's engagement ring, he changes his surname to Bogart. This takes place during Neil's time working as a headhunter at an employment agency in Jersey, circa 1964. He works his way up from promotions to running MGM Records in a year, and by 1969, Neil's at Buddha Records working with Cecil, where he poaches legendary band the Isley Brothers by offering them their own label. Lead singer Ron, who deduces that Neil pays DJs to play records, jacks him up before warming to him. Neil subsequently tweaks the group's soon-to-be smash It's Your Thing, which is probably one of the exaggerations referenced earlier. Influential DJ Frankie Crocker, who's impressed by an in-person performance of the song, nonetheless accepts payola from Bogart to put it into his station's rotation. After Buddha's sold, Neil offers his pops a business proposition, but he declines in favor of a loan instead, at the track no less. In need of rejuvenation, Bogey talks his dreams over with Beth in the new baby's room back at home. At work, he meets Bill O'Quine and his Queens-born beard, Joyce Biawata. When Bill steps away, sparks fly as she explains her plan for a television show culminating in him shooting his shot. After discussing both business and pleasure, MB closes the deal at her tiny apartment. Now acclaimed singer-songwriter Bill Withers soon shows up and is introduced to Frankie at pioneering black station WBLS, where he performs Ain't No Sunshine. Consequently, Neil and Buck are held at gunpoint for signing Withers away from Motown Records and are only spared after Bogart's mafia ties work things out with the black mob. But instead of playing it safe, he meets with a singer already signed to the vaunted black-owned Detroit label, Gladys Knight, during which she agrees to move to Buddha but insists on changing the title of Midnight Train to Houston. That same year, 1973, Neil leaves Buddha and moves the family to Cali. Back to the debt, which is 4.2 mil by 1975, as Donna fails to catch on with the public. As it rises to 4.5 mil, Casablanca's top execs attend the Kiss show, their first act, by the way, from the wings, after Aerosmith refuses to let them on their tour. Afterwards, Bogart has a heart-to-heart with bassist and co-founder Gene Simmons on a tour bus, and the two bond over their similarities, especially their shared Jewish backgrounds, humble beginnings, and underdog status. Inspired, Neil borrows another $200K from his mobster pal Joey. At home, Beth reveals that she knows about side chick Joyce. The debt reaches 4.8 mil by the time the execs meet with Parliament Funkadelic frontman George Clinton, during which Bogey kicks off his drug addiction with coke after promising George $1 million for a spaceship. At $5 million in debt, Bill admits to Kiss that some of their speakers are fake before they unveil the ballad Beth, which pisses Neil off. Perceiving it to be a blatant account of his failing marriage, he refuses to release it to the public. Neil later has a tense talk with his pops, who asks for more De Niro. Following Beth Holland, the debt hits 5.2 mil, and Kiss fights with co-manager Joyce and Neil. Manager Bill insists on $1 million per album, despite the band's piss-poor sales. Joyce grows concerned about her boyfriend's coke habit, and he subsequently argues with Cecil about his plan to release a live double album commemorating a quarter century of Johnny Carson's popular talk show. Here's Johnny, Magic Moments from the Tonight Show flops, pushing the debt to 6.2 million. This triggers a visit and a beating from Joey's goons. 7 million in the hole, Neil attends a house party where he notices Love to Love You being played over and over. Realizing it's too short to have to, he flies to Germany in order to convince Donna to re-record the song, and once in the studio, prompts her to embrace its inherent eroticism, resulting in her writhing on the floor and touching her knee in the dark during her performance. Neil later convinces Frankie to play the 16-minute, 50-second version of the newly titled Love to Love You Baby against his better judgment. While Frankie's preoccupied with groupies supplied by Bogart, the latter glues the record to the player and lets it spin. The worldwide re-release is a controversial smash by 1976, propelling Donna to superstardom as the so-called First Lady of Love. Neil's narration remarks that Donna's success is thought of as the true beginning of Casablanca, and not only erases the staggering debt, but yields over $8 million in profit. Around the same time, Kiss finally has a hit album with the live double release, Alive. The CEO buys his parents a house and his pops a rose. The Village People are signed, and our narrator admits that only the cop actually sang. He further explains that the company made $5 million in profit in a month and $6 million the next, some of which was used to repay Warner Brothers head Mo Ostin. And he agrees to release Kiss's Beth. Neil announces to the staff that he sold half of the company to Polygram for $15 million. He visits the old neighborhood years later, and on February 8th, 1980, he leaves Casablanca altogether, 5 days before his 37th birthday. He further reveals that he died 2 years later, on May 8th, 1982, from cancer. Bogey then performs a duet of Last Dance with Donna, who's backed by the Edwin Hawkins Singers in Heaven. A title card runs down a list of Casablanca's and its artists' achievements, including becoming the most successful independent label of all time. As the credits roll, video footage of the real Neil Bogart plays over the list of contributors. Incidentally, the movie doesn't have time to list a number of other notable acts during Bogart's tenure, including cameo on subsidiary Chocolate City, run by Cecil, Cher, The Captain and Tennille, Tony Orlando, and Lips Incorporated with their double platinum #1 song, Funky Town. Despite threatening to become a musical early on, Spinning Gold shakes out as a surprisingly decent biopic, featuring real-life musicians Jason Derulo, Wiz Khalifa, and Ledisi as, what else? Musicians. Written and directed by Neil's son, Timothy Scott Bogart, Spinning clearly sanitizes some of the shenanigans that took place during his father's life and career. However, the most poignant moment in the film is a scene early on when Neil's rumination on Lenny Bruce's early death at 40 foreshadows his own untimely passing at an even younger age. And to his credit, Timothy thankfully eschews the drab hues of the 70s and keeps the movie filled with vibrant, colorful imagery throughout. Gold is no Straight Outta Compton or Cadillac Records, but you could do a lot worse with your time. So check it out. Or better yet, just watch Eazy-E's climb to the top and subsequent death at a young age due to a horrible disease. In other news, it's time to check out some comments from other shows. After watching my early review for the Reacher streaming series, Cyril Breed said, "Great review and insights. Nice movie clip collage. Reacher can't even get a chance to eat, sleep, or breathe without some drama." I appreciate that, Cyril, and I agree, Reacher can't seem to catch a break. In response to my early review of Battle of the Super Sons, Sub King said, "Awesome." Thanks, Sub King. Shout out to Cyril Breed and Sub King for dropping comments. And shout out to everybody who hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But I've had enough of this conversation, so I'm logging off.
Fully cinematic.